Roll call left to right.
Reese Smith, Franklin.
Jerry Hayes, Barrett.
Ronnie Tickle, Memphis.
Mark Rudd, Knoxville.
Andy Allen, Escola.
Keith Whittington, Johnson City.
Randy Chase, Nashville.
Thank you. I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Hardships approved by Executive Director. So moved. Have a
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have the transcripts, March 21st, 2018.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now it's time to talk about the board officer vacancy. First of all, before I do that, I'd like to introduce our new board, Alan. And he's from Knoxville and Alcoa. And he is an electrical contractor, and we appreciate him being here. Carolyn, do you want to speak on behalf of the board officer that we have a vacancy on? Actually,
Yes.
two, I think. Or maybe.
Yes, with the public member vacancy and Bill Mason's departure, we do have a vacancy for, I guess it would be secretary, because the vice chairman, the secretary moves up to vice chairman, and that would be Randy Chase, vice chairman. And then you just need a nomination for a secretary.
Do I have any nominations for our secretary? All of them? Speak up at once now.
Who's the immediate past chair?
Jerry.
So either you or Keith or Mark?
I'll nominate Keith.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Keith wins.
Keith, I didn't hear your vote.
I asked if it was a railroad job or not.
Now you know.
All right, thank you, Keith, for offering to serve. Now we're ready for our license approval. Do we have a motion to approve the waive license?
So moved.
Do you have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Interviews. Let's start my left.
Okay, I have a couple of interviews that require an interview with because of a felony. One is Memphis Roofing Company, LLC, home improvement license 8884. I would move for, I have two, we'll do them both at the same time, but I approve that one on an interview. And then the other one is Royalty Electric Inc. It's a regular contractor's license, CE, license number 72275. I've inspected their file. They're way off probation or any other type of settlement, and I would move for approval of those two.
Thank you, Reese. I have two. I have a file number 72378. It's a felon for a BC license. I'd like to approve him subject to him getting 3 other references to us. He's got great assets is what he knows, but I still would like to get 3 more reference letters. The other one is a roofer, 72320 White House Roofing. He did not have a license. He roofed quite a few houses, as a matter of fact, without a license. And I asked to hold this subject to approving, subject to him paying a $1,200 fine. That includes me. Mark.
I've got one It's Champs Construction, 8869. He has felony on his record that he's still on probation for another 18 months. He's been clean since 2011, but before that, had some felony issues, assault and possession, you know, things on his rap sheet. This is Cass Thomas. Told him I would give him a chance to address us, if that's all right. Kind of plead his case. In the past, we have not approved felons until they're off probation.
Do you want, should we have him now or wait till we get through?
You can go ahead and speak.
Cassie, you can come up and.
I'll get you a check.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what's going on.
Well, I'm a 34-year-old man, and my charges took place when I was just basically still a young adult, just learning life. I haven't had any problems since, like we say, 2011 was the last time. I haven't been incarcerated since 2008. I've been on probation for about 10 years now. I'm going on for about 8 years. I have like a 10-year sentence. I actually am in a position where I talk with the prosecutors and everything, which they are willing to suspend my sentence and release me from probation if I am rewarded with this home improvement license. I'm also a member, I'm involved in BCT. I'm going to school for building construction at this current moment. MBE certified with the city and the county. I'm LOSB certified with the county. I'm doing everything I can to provide for my family. I have 4 boys that are basically teenagers, going to preteen, and I'm just trying to show them the right road. I'm totally away from anything criminal, any type of criminal activity, any type of criminal thinking. I'm just way beyond that. And I just ask that the board, please don't let my work be in vain, my progress be in vain. I have actually I've done some jobs, of course, they've been under $3,000. And again, I have bids actually that I can take part in, that I'm actually prepared and they are prepared for me to take part in once I'm approved. Again, I can be out for probation once I receive this and I go take it back to court, which I will be doing within the next week once approved.
As Mark said, you're on probation. Typically, we don't approve for a license, but it sounds to me like if you can get the letter to us releasing you, it's just a matter of us approving you at that time. You said that you can get your probation officer send us a letter. It sounds to me like it would knock off 2 years of your probation, which would probably do something scary.
Couldn't we approve it subject to that letter?
I would say yes,
But I heard him say, it was the chicken and the egg, that he had to have the license before they,
In order to go to court.
before they let
Once
him off.
Yes, sir.
That's
So
what I heard.
once I have the license and I'm able to be approved for the license, again, I have my Lloyd Steinberg, and I've already spoken with the prosecutor. He's already spoken with the prosecutor, and they kind of like already agreed to release me from probation once I am able to obtain it.
I think that if you have a letter from Ms. Carroll stating that you get a license subject to them telling us it's okay, I would imagine they'll go along with releasing you. they want something from us saying that you're gonna get your license.
Yes, sir.
I think the board would give you that license when you have that, just like Jerry said. Can that not take place?
Carter would like to address the board.
Carter.
Excuse me, John, what's the classification here?
On the road.
Home improvement, okay.
Carter.
Yeah, I apologize if I'm speaking out of order. Carter Lawrence, Assistant Commissioner. Although it's not yet become law, I wanted to make the members aware of legislation that has become law and takes effect July 1st, the Fresh Start Act. The Fresh Start Act, if I'm simplifying, essentially says that our occupational licensing boards are not to deny for licensure for past criminal acts unless those criminal acts directly tie to the profession, to the licensed profession. With that said, I would think maybe the consideration here would not be as to the probation, but maybe to what the acts were and how they would relate to the license. And again, this isn't law yet, but I would urge that you consider how imminent this will become law, just July 1st, so it's just right around the corner.
Didn't our board have some type of exception, or in there, an exception in that law somewhere if you're going into somebody's residence? That's okay, we'll get back to it.
Yeah, I'd like to recommend approval.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Uh,
Aye. Thank you so much, and you stay straight and narrow path, and good luck to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
You in church?
Yes, sir. I go to club at 10%.
Excuse me. Can I grab a cloth?
Are you in Covington, Tennessee? Is that where you're from?
That's why I go to church here. Yes, sir.
In Covington,
Yes, sir.
Tennessee?
Yes, sir.
Right outside of Zone?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just checking.
That's all I've got, Ronnie.
Thank you.
Ronnie, I've got a stack here. The first one is an LLE application, license number, well, it doesn't have a number on it. Does have a felony conviction. He's served his time. It was for cocaine and meth possession. Served 3 years in prison. Completed his parole and has been non-reporting since 2015. He's turned his life around, and I recommend approval. The name is Baron Deal, but the file handed to me that has no number on it. The next one is license number 72360. It's Property Solutions. It was a felony. Probation's been completed. This is for a BCA-B small commercial. I did interview the guy and recommend approval and I reduced the limit to 300,000. I think they were requesting, and I forget, 750 or something like that. And I reduced, yeah, it was 750. And I reduced him down because of experience to 300,000, and he was fine with that. So I recommend approval of that. The next one is license number 42760. It's Green and Green Custom Homes. They were in here for projects they listed on their increase application that were listed over their current monetary limit, which was 105,000. And they listed projects 340, 390, 236, etc. I offered them, and they accepted a civil penalty of $2,500 and recommend approval of the increase to 500,000 once the civil penalty is received. The next one is license number 72376. It was an application for a BCA. The applicant had absolutely no past experience in construction other than the fact that he ran a couple of contractors off on his house and completed his own personal house and decided he wanted to go into construction and had no background, no education in building, and I denied the license. I feel as though he needs to have more experience before we allow him to go out into the public and work. And I told him to do some remodels or to work with he had a couple of friends that was willing to help him out. So that license I'm recommending denial of. The next one is 72364. This applicant is applying for actually had applied for a BCA small commercial license. They passed the NASCLA commercial exam, but that doesn't cover our BCA. So we're going to have to wait on the BCA exam score. And then also on his application, he had contracted without a license on at least 3 different jobs. And I'm recommending a $2,500 civil penalty, and that will need to be paid before issuance, as well as receiving the BCA score. Again, that's my recommendation for that. And the last one I have is 71741 Clayton Electrical. I'm sorry, I don't remember. Okay. Probably don't really need to bring this up. They are seeking a BCA little R restricted license. We had no felony information on this one. They did have a felony and didn't have it with him. That was the one that
Yeah,
got
he
it.
had a paper, but he didn't have what we needed.
He didn't have what we needed, a letter from the parole board, and so we're going to wait on issues on that. Do I need to recommend approval upon it? No, I need to see that one. So really, that one doesn't even need to be brought up. My apologies.
I've got 3 that are felony convictions that I would present as being approved, but 72329 CNR Heating and Cooling was the first one. Off probation. Felony happened a while ago. The QA, Tammy Smith, has worked in the HVAC business for the last 7 years, learning the trade and from her brother and others, and now is applying for her own license as a mechanical contractor, CMCC and a CE. I recommend that we approve her application. The next one was 72277, Reed Mechanical. Also looking for a CMCC. And this gentleman has worked for 2 or 3 companies. The issue happened in the mid-1990s. Short probation period, no jail time. Everything's in order, so I would request that we approve that as well. The last one is 72370, Deemers and Sons. Contracting, looking for a BCA, had a felony back in the 80s. No, nothing since then. Off probation, all his paperwork is in order, and I would recommend that we approve that one as well. That's all I got.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve? So moved. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Revisions? LLEs.
I have 3 of those that are reinstatements. Moving for approval of all 3.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? LLPs.
Got 4 of those. I would recommend and offer that we approve those 4. They were reinstatements as well.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. HIs.
Those were already approved by Bill Mason.
Okay. Thank you, Bill. Okay. How about the legal report?
Could we go ahead and move something from the on the agenda to new business and
Yeah.
have Carter Lawrence address the board?
Could you get your computer going? Just to actually get your spot here, just so y'all don't have to look sideways. I thought I'd come right up in front of you. Thanks so much. You thirsty about this? Big drinking coffee. I appreciate y'all letting me come and now go out of order twice. This is actually my second consecutive year to be here in Jackson, so making it a little bit of a tradition. Carolyn, what's on the screen there is a commercial that I wanted to show y'all as an example of some content that we were capable of creating as part of the advertising and outreach campaign. The goal would be to get out the word about hiring licensed contractors. So kind of 3 methods to do that. First, just a general talk about what it is that the department does with regards to overseeing regulated professions and how we protect consumers and the methods for doing that. The second would be to talk explicitly about the need to hire licensed individuals. And then the third that we would like to create is kind of a natural disaster response campaign with the goal of that something like, God forbid, another Gatlinburg fire happens, we've got a commercial that's ready to go and ready to go directly into the affected areas. That would be a combination of an insurance message and telling consumers what they need to do from an insurance perspective, and then secondly, what they need to look for from their contractor. So first off, hiring a licensed individual, and then walking through some of the consumer protection steps that we've talked about in past campaigns. So what I wanted to show you here is just an example of the first of the 3 categories that I talked about. This is just a rough draft that we had created. The audio is apparently not going to play through the projector. That's, however, not too important because I've actually changed the script since they made that. So they're just kind of giving you an example. So I'll stop right there and play this.
Department of Commerce and Insurance is committed to providing Tennesseans with the best possible business experience. We ensure that persons meet minimum standards by responsibly and timely handling complaints, providing customer education on regulated professions and industries, and protecting the health and safety of Tennesseans. Before hiring a professional, verify that individual is properly licensed in Tennessee by checking verify.tn.gov. If you feel you've been the victim of an unfair or deceptive business practice, witnessed an unlicensed activity, or seen misconduct, file a complaint online at tn.gov/commerce. To check on a disciplinary action or to learn more about consumer protection, call 615-741-2241 or visit us online at tn.gov/commerce. The Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance, protecting Tennessee consumers.
All right. So again, that's just the first one, the general department-wide one that we're going to be pushing out, and then we are planning on doing some specific ones. I say planning because I wanted to come to you for approval for that. I mentioned this idea to Carolyn. She thought that this would be something that you'd be very supportive of, and I wanted to, before I got there, take it to you for approve or move forward, because as you know, we would need to dedicate some funds if this was to be a radio and television campaign as we saw it going.
What about GoBuild? Will GoBuild participate in funding this?
Had not broached it with them.
They got a lot of money. A lot of our money.
I'd be happy to discuss with them.
Now, you show different professions in that film as well. Are you going to go to those particular boards and ask for funds for them as well?
Yes, we would be. So this, again, was just a general one. The other two categories that I talked about would be specific to contractors. So a licensure one that just talks about hiring licensed contractors and the things that consumers need to look for. And then that third category was the disaster response. And the goal with that one was that it'd be part insurance and part Board of Licensing Contractors. The insurance component, we obviously would be able to handle the funding of, since that's internal for us at Commerce Insurance. It's that other part, the licensing contractors, that wanted to see about your interest in participating in and then what level of interest. And to Reese's point, might need to look to Go Build to see if they would potentially want to help fund that, maybe with some co-branding. I certainly would be open to doing that, so I'd be happy to have discussions there. But I gather that this is something that you, the members, would like to proceed with?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Maybe to give a little bit more information on how this works, TV and radio stations can get credit from the FCC for running essentially PSAs at primetime hours. So a reduced buy can get you additional kind of purchasing power, if you will, from the station's perspective. So, for example, about a $150,000 buy would be the equivalent of spending $750,000 on the open market. So it'd be a really strong campaign. What we are trying to negotiate right now is the ability to have some funds set aside for the disaster relief ones. So, for example, a natural disaster hits here in Jackson. We would like to be able to say, we're going to saturate the Jackson market with those disaster response videos that we talked about. This is something new for them that they've not done in the past, so that might take a little bit longer to kind of hammer that part out. But we can quickly move forward with the licensure. The second of the categories that I talked about, that'd be specific to your board, and we could produce that pretty quickly. So what I was interested in knowing was whether you, the board, would want to today determine how much you would want to set aside for a campaign like this, or as Reese brought up, for some conversations to happen maybe with Go Build and see if they would want to set aside funds. So that'd be first. And then second, if you did want to set aside or determine what funds you want to set aside, if you wanted to empower Carolyn to be able to give the go-ahead on the campaign, or if you would want it to come back to you, the board.
We will have to know how much money that we have here on the board that we can spend. And the second, but number one thing, like Reese said, we're already giving Go Build like 50%, and I think it would behoove them to join in, because this is something like all of us have been talking about.
Sure.
And this kind of concept, some of us already had it. We were going to get from Go Build. But I think this was sure enough to get it out.
Okay. So maybe first step, I'll just have a conversation with Go Build and see their interest, and could update you at your next board meeting at that point. If there is information prior to that, if they wanted to move forward, I might see if Caroline could reach out to you, and if we could get the ball rolling a little bit faster. I don't want to sit on this for too long.
It seems to me as though, and it's probably been 3, maybe 4 years ago, the board, I thought, set aside funds for a statewide advertising campaign. And we were supposed to do billboards. It was a public program then, and nothing ever came of that. So there may already be a funding method there that the board has provided for us.
Okay.
It's all I'm approaching.
I'll take a look at that. I do know that at some point in the past, there have been some advertising campaigns. Carolyn had mentioned that. If you
Right.
want to update.
Yes, we spent about $300,000. Now, this was several years ago, prior to the one that you all authorized most recently. But we did spend, it was over $300,000, but it wasn't set up to run during a disaster, which is the time it's needed. it was just sort of like a season. I think it was like the spring season, and they run, and then that was it. That's all we got out of it, other than some posters and brochures. So I think this is totally a lot better aspect to have something set up for, you know, disasters. But I think as far as money, our balance right now is like $410,000, and that's just through February, for our numbers to February, or maybe March. And so that doesn't include the next couple of months before the end of June.
Do we have any reserve funds?
Well, we have plenty of reserve funds.
Yes, unfortunately, though, as you know, the reserves are essentially untouchable. F&A, Finance Administration, won't let us spend out of the reserves. Like Tantalus, those reserves are just out of reach.
And there was a bill that passed, a law that passed, along with the felony theft bill a long time ago, I think 2010, and it said whatever fines were collected when prosecuting contractors who have been found guilty of felony theft, those funds would be set aside for public information and education, to educate the public. But there hasn't been any money for usually those kind of what it is a crime. There's not any money to go after, so we don't get any fines for those.
If I could draw another distinction between what Carolyn mentioned happened in the past and now, was that in the past, it's my understanding that the creation of the advertising campaign was outsourced, which would have incurred some additional costs, and now we're capable of producing this in-house at no cost to the board. So we've actually already done some of this at a small cost to the board. We produced posters that are going to be used for distribution. For example, when your new employees are hired in the next fiscal year, this would be material that they're able to take to the counties when they visit to distribute. So we have undertaken some of those. With just a TV and radio campaign was, I thought, of a sufficiently different level that needed to come and update you, the board, on that.
Yes, and the posters, I didn't bring one of them, but it looks like this on the front.
Just bigger.
Just a lot bigger, but and it has like a bullet section of what to do to make sure you hire a licensed contractor and what not to do, not to pay cash up front for the whole job, and make sure they get a permit, but manually check to make sure they're licensed. So it is a poster, but it's on this color like this.
And where will the posters be?
Well, we're going to send them to the codes officials, to each of the codes office, for them to post and have it there for when the public come there to reveal that their main place right now.
We also have a call to the that our communications team has made to a retailers association to see if they would allow these to go into, if they would push any of their members to put them in their stores. I had in mind, home improvement stores to see if we could get
Lowe's,
them.
Home Depot, that would be good. That'd probably work.
Do you have an idea, Carter, what kind of money you're looking for from us? Or?
The $150,000 that I mentioned earlier was discussed from our communications director as what he saw as a really strong buy that would enable a pretty good saturation for kind of the general, that second category, but then would also leave monies set aside to respond to the natural disasters. Which, and again, I do want to caution that we're not entirely sure if we will be able to figure out that part about the response to the natural disasters, because this is uncharted territory for the local TV and radio stations to just have those set aside.
I think just using that to brand, so to speak, will help you even in a subsequent event. If you've already put that out there, people will get the idea.
Right.
The one question I will have to ask is, when you say you're making a buy, is this buy for statewide?
Yes, we do it statewide. And another thing I should mention that we're planning on doing is when we produce the content and it's available, so it'd be on YouTube, in the aftermath of a natural disaster, we would be making this available for the local reporters. We anticipate that we would be getting earned media, which is essentially when the local TV station or the local paper picks up on your story and kind of repackages it as their own. So I anticipate that we would get additional play out of the content that we create at no cost at all. That's the goal anyway.
Thank you.
So you're absolutely welcome. I guess I wanted to revisit, so we don't need a motion from y'all today because I'll just have an individual conversation.
We're on board with you.
Okay.
Okay? We're on board.
All right.
And all we need to know is Carolyn kind of told us we got about $400,000 to right now. And when you talk to GoBill, like Reese suggested, see what they come up with, if any, and then at that point, then I believe we'll be able to help move forward.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's move to the legal report.
All right, Dennis Gregory for the ABC. I'll start out the first half and then let Stuart finish the rest. And if for some reason I mischaracterized something we talked about in the subcommittee, just let me know. Starting with number 4, case number 2018-002791. Recommendation was originally for $500 civil penalty, being changed to a $1,000 civil penalty. Number 9, 2018-005651. Original recommendation was to close. This is going to be a change to close the flag. Number 16, 2018-012131. Original recommendation was for a $1,000 civil penalty. That's going to be changed to $2,500 civil penalty. Number 17, 2018-009141. Original recommendation was for a $1,000 civil penalty. That's being changed to a $2,500 civil penalty. 23, 2018-003881. Original recommendation was, actually was to discuss the matter with members, and recommendation and decision rather was a $500 civil penalty along the letter of warning. 24, 2018-005081. Original recommendation was a $2,500 civil penalty, now a $1,000 civil penalty. $35, 2018-011851. Original recommendation was for a $5,000 civil penalty. It's now being changed to a $10,000 civil penalty. 36, 2018-019431. Original recommendation was for a $1,000 civil penalty. That is now going to be changed to a $2,500 civil penalty. 38, 2018-014921. Original recommendation was a $5,000 civil penalty. That's now being changed to a $15,000 civil penalty. 39, 2018-005001. Original recommendation was for a $2,000 civil penalty. That's now being changed to a $15,000 civil penalty. 22, 2017, 02-8181. Original recommendation was to close and flag. The new recommendation and the decision by the board was to simply close. Number 5, 2018, 004711. Original recommendation was to close, the new recommendation is to close and flag. And the decision is close and flag. Number 9, 2018, 014551. Original recommendation was place the complaint in litigation monitoring. The new decision is to flag the respondent. Close and flag the respondent.
I have the other half. I have one. 20, it's number 7, 2018-009031. Original recommendation was that this was a contract dispute civil matter to close, and the board has decided to place into litigation monitoring. That's all I have.
Make a motion, we approve the legal report.
Have a second? Second. All in favor? Thank you. Let's go to LLE limited license electrician discussion.
Ronnie, this conversation comes from me upon some conversations with a local electrical inspector and chief building official in Johnson City. A limited licensed electrician up in our area actually pulled a permit for a restaurant that's being built. He's limited to $25,000, but the electrical work on this job will run in the neighborhood of $120,000 to $130,000. I've tried to talk to Cindy. I made a call back to Cindy, former board member, electrical member, and Cindy was aware that they were able to do this under the intent that the owner would furnish materials for anything over the $25,000, and the LLE could do that. And how this came about, she didn't know, and I've not found anyone that really knows yet. But I think the intent of a limited license, whether it be electrician or plumber, was to limit them, to help them get started, not to limit them as far as what they could provide on a large job. And I think the board, I would ask the board revisit the intent of the LLE and if we even want to keep it, number one, and number two, that we place restrictions on an LLE to residential only, and the intent of the $25,000 being the largest project they can participate in. I don't think that when this was brought up to the board that it was ever intended for them to go and exceed $25,000. Anybody have any discussion?
Didn't you tell me that, I thought on a regular contractor's license, it's labor and material.
Correct.
But you're telling me on an LLE, it should be labor only.
Anything, it could be $1 million if the owner's purchasing.
On a state
And a lot of
contractor's
these
license, a license, if the owner furnishes it, that still's part of your bid. I don't know if LLE is different.
They are different.
Okay.
The way I see it, they are different. And the other point I will make is a lot of the LLEs in the state have never passed an exam. And we're finding that more and more people are using these LLEs to do larger and larger jobs because they found this loophole. And they can hire an LLE to do the work and get around hiring a qualified CE license holder. And we all know an electrical inspector can't inspect every single thing that goes into a project. So I think it becomes a public safety concern when we're having a LLE perform work to which he may or may have not taken an exam and to which he may or may not be qualified to do. And what do you think?
I like the call on our new electrical gentleman to my right.
Well, I definitely appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I totally agree that the $25,000 should have definitely included all labor and material on the job site. And limited it to a residential application would not be a bad thing. And then also the limited licensed electricians that were grandfathered in should have went away, so now they should be taking tests. So, you know, those that hold the license, I agree with, you know, that they are grandfathered in, but any new license definitely need to take the required tests.
Right.
So I've read her draft and I really appreciate it. I think it's a good draft.
And if I can address the board just about the draft that you all have looked at, that's just something to kind of foster discussion. That hasn't been, it has to be voted on by the board before I send it to the administration for their approval. And then I would come back with all of the related materials as far as moving forward with the rule. I think if we keep it in the electrical portion or the portion that I've drafted, we probably could go with a proposed rule. And that would eliminate a rulemaking hearing. Of course, if you start opening up too many parts of the rule, you subject yourself to a rulemaking hearing. And at that point, we could get a lot of comments. It could be, you know, a more difficult path. I'm not saying it can't be done, but it could be a more difficult path than a proposed rule. And like I said, the only thing I really changed in that draft is to say the labor and materials, if they're even furnished by the owner. If the total cost exceeds $25,000, they need a contractor's license. But I did, like I said, I drafted that to kind of foster discussion amongst the board.
Now, I would say the one thing that would be the caveat to this in a residential situation is when the homeowner starts buying the very expensive chandeliers or light poles, then it can get up to $25,000 fairly quick. So we definitely need to make sure we word this correctly.
You know, a $10,000 chandelier, do you want it done all these?
Great question. Great question.
When he drops it.
Would you like some help from Andy on this?
Sure, I can reach out to you, Andy, and we can kind of talk about the exact language and what I'll do in July is come back with what Andy and I decided on. We can vote on that official language. Like I said, this was just a draft from me working in my office, but I can definitely talk to you and we can present official language to the board in July.
That sounds good. Thank you.
So whatever we do in July, that would become effective immediately and
It would not. So we have to decide if we think that it's emergent enough that we need to do emergency rules, we can proceed that way. We could go through the proposed rule process and it takes a little bit longer. I think that's a question that the board has to decide if we think it's emergent enough that we need to enact emergency rules.
I think people are going to want to know from me what time frame we're talking about in the process.
So if you approve it in July, from there it has to go to the Attorney General's office, it has to go to the governor's office. And that process could take anywhere from 3 to 6 months. And then once it's filed with the Secretary of State, it sits for another 90 days to see if there are any comments on the rules, if we have to go back and do a rulemaking here.
We're talking about at least a year.
Talking about
9 months is being conservative.
2019, March.
What about emergency?
So emergency, it takes probably 4 or 5 months, but we have to run 2 sets at the same time because they're only effective for a certain amount of time. So I would run 2 sets at the same time. Like I said, it's a little bit more laborious, but I can do it.
I think we'd like to be the emergency.
Okay.
Is that,
Make the motion.
could I have a motion for that?
So moved.
What's the motion?
I can't make
The
a
motion is to proceed in emergency
Okay. So.
process of making changes to the LLE process.
Okay. So what will
License.
happen today is, like I said, I'll talk to Andy, and then in July, I will give you the official language to go forward with that process, because we don't have the official language yet
Okay.
that we want the rule to state. So Andy and I will talk in July. I'll present those rules to the board. You can vote on that, and we'll begin the emergency rule process from there.
That's right. Is everybody in favor of that? Can I have an aye? Aye. Thank you. Okay. Exam request for North Carolina's electrical people, it appears.
Reciprocity.
Yeah, I think Carol's gonna talk about it.
Yes, North Carolina has reached out to us again about forming a reciprocal agreement to waive the trade exam for our CE contractor's license. And they last reached out in 2012, and they had drafted an agreement that pretty much said that we'll accept theirs if we accept, if they accept ours. And along with it, they wanted to make sure that they only take ones that actually passed the exam. They didn't want anybody that had been grandfathered. And there are several that were grandfathered that were licensed prior to 1989, I believe. So that's part of their stipulation, which is, I think we had that with some of the other states. And the other, they wanted to review our exam, and they wanted you all to also have make their exam available to review as well. I've talked to Andy a little bit about it, and told him I could send him all the contact information as far as getting in touch with, PSI getting in touch with him to let him review the North Carolina's exam. He can also review Tennessee's exam as well, to look at it to make sure it is comparable. And, but we just wanted to get this on the agenda for you to vote to agree to move forward with it, and then maybe July or maybe September, however long it takes Andy to review it, to make a decision then to whether to approve a reciprocal agreement.
The way I read that, North Carolina's got 3 different classes of electrical. What are we doing, CE with their unlimited, is that?
Yes,
So
CE.
we wouldn't be accepting those other 2
Right,
as reciprocal.
right.
Okay. Let's move forward to formal hearings.
I guess, do I need a vote, you think, for them to,
Vote to accept it?
I
You're
guess,
just gonna review?
just
I thought we
I don't think we
did.
would vote for it.
Okay, vote.
Okay, sorry about that.
Look at it,
Okay.
Formal hearings.
Formal hearings, we have one last month, or this month, on the 17th, and it was an unlicensed contractor, and they were fined $15,000. So that's only formal hearing we have right now. I think any of the others that were scheduled were pretty much settled before time for the hearing.
Did that contractor be a no-show?
He was a no-show. But we had had contact with him, he knew what was going on. He had it discontinued, or discontinued several times, and the last continuance was, they told him no, you have to move on, so. He is being prosecuted criminally as well, so.
What county?
It was Knox County.
They're terrible.
He thought they were going to have to shell got this. Let's talk about legislation.
Okay, there was 3 bills that passed. Okay. The GO bill extension was approved, and it will, it's expiring in 2019. It will go on until July 1st, 2024. So it was extended.
Wow.
The other was a felony theft felony theft law that just included new home construction, and it also where materials for substandard quality were used after they had paid for a higher quality, which would be considered fraud. So that bill passed. And then also, it's called I think Carter addressed this a little bit already, but it's the Fresh Start bill. And this is where a license shouldn't be denied for a felony unless it has to do with the type of work they perform, where they were convicted of a felony that affected the type of work they perform.
You have to be able to make a connection between what that conviction was and the license that they're receiving prior to denial.
So if it's theft, can we correlate that to, for example, an LLE and an LLP license with them going into someone's home? I mean, this has been our board's approach in the past. If it was a felony for theft or rape or egregious nature, we don't want to, or haven't wanted to give a license to someone that allows them just to go in a home and potentially commit the same crime again.
Right. The bill or the law does not explicitly list all of the violations for which you could deny someone. Instead, it's saying that it has to be directly related, and then the interpretation of that would fall to you, the board. So I would say that arguably, yes, that there would be a direct correlation there for which you would be able to issue a denial. The law does urge consideration of factors including time that something happened. So if, for example, something did happen that was directly related, so if, for example, theft was directly related for the purposes of the Fresh Start Act, but it happened 40 years ago, that would be something for you to consider as well.
I'll be perfectly honest. I think every board member on here takes every one of those into consideration. If it was 20 years ago, it's like water under the bridge. Let's get this guy working and contributing and move forward. But I think this bill might put us in a spot is if the felony was 2 years ago. We just completed probation and it's for rape and he wants an LLE, then we're supposed to consider a fresh start. And that makes it difficult on a board member. And I'll just be very public and blunt about it. It makes it difficult for us to make that type of decision. And I hope there is some room there for a board member to make that potentially controversial decision.
There absolutely is. The legislature was not attempting to take away your discretion in denying for violations that are directly related. Instead, I believe what the intent of it was to prevent blanket denials. So there was the belief that some boards and commissions would deny for any past violation. And that is explicitly what the legislature wanted to push back against and say, no, it has to be directly related and you need to go through a process to consider whether this denial should proceed or whether you should go ahead and grant the license. But you absolutely, the board, you certainly still have discretion and will be tasked with interpreting this and applying it to the specific set of facts. But that's really the key, that it needs to be about a specific set of facts and not just a blanket policy that would apply to all across the board.
We thought that out, our board has already before that rule even came into effect. We've been very cautious and diligent in what we've done there, all of our board members have.
Right, and they looked at each case individually, so, you know, like today's a good example, you had them all come in, talk to them, and so it wasn't a blanket decision where, okay, everybody that had been convicted of theft, you will not get a license, so I think you don't go way beyond, sure, okay.
Thank you. Let's move now to the budget.
And on our budget, right now, like I said earlier, our balance is like 410,474, and this is up to the end of March. And, I did have one other thing that I needed to add on the budget is making sure it's okay to register for the NASPLA conference. It's actually going to be in Nashville this year. So I wanted to get your approval to spend the money for some attorneys to go. They get continuing education, and also we may have investigators by then. So they do offer an investigator training as well. So I just wanted to let you know it may be altogether maybe $1,000 to $2,000 to send several people to that. That's just an estimate. 'Cause I think the registration fee is around $475, and then depending on how many go, then that's what it would end up
Is
being.
that per person?
Per person. And also, if any of the board members want to attend, many of the states send their board members to go. So that's something I can email you the brochures for it in case you want to come in for that.
I think last year we had one or two go. I'm not sure, I think so, from the board. I was not one of them.
I'll move that we appropriate money for that.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Are you an officer?
No, I'm no longer an officer, but I'm just on the board of directors. I was in 2009, I was president and wrote off.
Well, let me ask you a question. Can we send you and approve money to send you?
What?
Can we send you to this and approve money to send you, or what we just approved is part of your money? I'm just trying to find out.
Yes, you can.
Yes, which way?
You approved me to go and pay for it.
So, can I have a motion for some money to send Carol?
I think that's what you.
That's what we just did.
She's included in that.
Well, I asked that question and she went around.
I'm sorry, I didn't know what you were asking.
But that's all right. Reese did, that's the main thing, so, okay.
But I want to take my attorneys with me.
But that's okay. I understood that part.
Okay.
Thank you. It's next meeting, August 27th through the 30th. Yeah, that's your conference. And then what about new business?
Next meeting will be July 24th in Nashville.
Do we have anything else? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
I just want y'all to know this, is that our illustrious gentleman over here, we talked about lunch, but he's out of it again.